Welcome back into Bo Sox Talk. I am your host, Jake Iggy, and I am here with one of the best Red Sox YouTubers on the internet, Red Seat Radio's Corbin. How we doing, man?
Jake, I've been better.
Yeah,
I
so how
have
we feeling
been
about the
better.
Sox, dude? Feeling all right?
Not great. Not great. I don't know that there's anyone in the world that's feeling good right now. We were just talking about this. We have been unbelievably, kind of overly positive at points, and there's just nothing to be positive about right now.
Yeah, especially with them starting the season 1-5, first time since 2019, and coming off of a series where they got swept by the Astros. And just to put into perspective how overmatched they were outscored 23-7, struck out 38 times offensively in just 3 games, and every starter got hit around, even Garrett Crochet, which is crazy to say.
Yeah, there wasn't one thing that you can point to in this series and go, okay, maybe that's something to build off of, right? And I think that's the problem with the start to the Red Sox season so far is that we've had slow starts. I think Carabas was one of the ones who tweeted out, but a bunch of people tweeted out. It's like every year the Red Sox have slow Marches/Aprils, but it's like you're always sitting there, and even last year, it was like okay, the team looks solid, but Rafael Devers has struck out what like 19 times or whatever it was in 4 games. So you're like, okay, once he gets hot, the team's gonna look a little bit different. You're sitting there looking at this team against the Astros. It's like, well, the starting pitching didn't do super well. The bullpen didn't do super well. The lineup struck out what was it, 36 times,
Yeah,
37 times in the last 2 games?
yeah.
The first
Well,
two games?
38 in the 38 in the first 3 games, or in the 3 games of the series. Yeah.
Yeah. And the defense has double the errors it had at this point last year. So it's like you can't even sit there and point to something and be like, well, once this clicks, they'll be going. It's like you kind of have to rework the whole team and the focus of what you're doing with each of these individual segments.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing that we've noticed so far in the first week of the season is that they're playing like the Red Sox have played over, it seems like the last 4 to 5 years of just sloppy baseball and making dumb decisions. And a lot of the times, what we've seen is either the offense is going or the pitching side is going. And right now, at least in this past series, neither of them were going. And I feel like the biggest sort of conversation that we've seen on the internet so far regarding the Red Sox is people trying to like kind of dumb down the panic. And I wanted to talk to you about this of like, what are your thoughts on the idea of it being like too early to panic?
So after the first series, I was one of those people where I was like, look, it's 3 games into the season, right? We can't make any declarations about 3 games into the season. Even after the first game in Houston, I was like, look, you get back to Fenway Park 2-4. If you just don't get swept, you're 2 games under 500. You're coming home, which historically, at least last year, the Red Sox had figured out a way to really make Fenway Park a weapon, right? You're not going into not going into Fenway in a bad mood, sort of with all these narratives surrounding it. You'll be okay. Now you come out of Houston and you're 1-5. Right? Not only 1-5, but you got absolutely. I mean, you got your head bashed in. To me, there's a saying that gets said to me 1,000 times since I started my YouTube channel, and it's you're never gonna win a playoff series in April, but you sure as hell can lose a playoff series in April, right? And I think the fear right now is not so much can the Red Sox dig themselves out of this. I think the answer is yes, right? The Red Sox are a talented team. There's a chance by the end of April, you're looking at this team and you're like, oh yeah, remember they started 1-5? Well, now they're 500 for the month, or now they're 2 games over 500 for the month, or whatever it is, right? But the question now becomes are they going to dig themselves a deep enough hole where they just simply can't figure out how to get themselves out of it? Are the Blue Jays and the Yankees or the Orioles or whoever going to get high enough up above you where you just simply can't dig yourself out of it? And I think that's the problem with the panic this early on in the season.
Yeah, I feel like I am one of those people too, to where it's like, especially some of the player evaluations where, people really were getting on Caleb
Mm.
Durbin. I even found myself, even earlier today and yesterday, kind of like looking at Roman Anthony's numbers. Like in my mind, obviously he's a guy who will bounce back. I do think that he is a guy who's going to be one of the best players on this team, but he's objectively struggled to start the season, even though he did hit a home run in the final game of the Astros series. But just overall, I think this is likely the worst way that the Red Sox could have started the season outside of just going winless, mainly because the whole sort of thing that Craig Breslow was trying to market after they lost Bregman was run prevention. And the reason why they didn't get that much power is because the rotation was going to be absolute nails. And when you look at the rotation struggles, Bayo, 5 earned runs in 4 2/3. Gray, 3 earned runs in 4 innings. Suarez, 4 earned runs in 4 and 1 innings. Crochet, 4 earned runs in 11 innings. Yeah, he shoved on opening day, but struggled a little bit in the last game of the Astros series. Early was the only one who was actually like dominant. And it's crazy because I still consider him a rookie. But then when you look at just like the opposite of run prevention that we've been seeing from this team, they've allowed the second most home runs in the MLB. They have the fourth worst ERA in the league, and batters are hitting 260, which is the fifth highest in the league. Like, that's the absolute opposite of what Craig Breslow was trying to build with this team. And I think that is the biggest issue.
Yeah, I'd agree for the most part. I do think that, I'm not panicked as much about the rotation. I'll be honest with you, right? I think, Gray and Suarez, these guys are veterans. And Crochet has had a history with the Astros where they just, for some reason, see him well. And so, I sit there with the rotation. It's like, yeah, maybe Suarez is going to have a 270 ERA or whatever, and this is going to be the best rotation in baseball. But I still think they're going to be a top 10 rotation, potentially even a top 7 rotation. To me, the biggest concern and one of the biggest reasons why I think we're seeing so much panic so early on here, despite the fact that the record is terrible, is kind of exactly what you said. The focus was going to be on the rotation, right? But the Red Sox and Craig Breslow were preaching, because we're focusing on the rotation, we're going to bring in some guys. After we lost Bregman, you bring in Caleb Durbin, and you sit there and you say, this lineup and defense is going to be athletic, it's going to be smart, and it's going to play the game in a way that's going to be entertaining to watch. And right now, you're not getting any of that. Not only, we mentioned the errors earlier, but the strikeouts are just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's not just that you're missing pitches right now, it's that you're swinging. I mean, Duran, Story, Cedon, just today. Like, Seitan swung at a pitch that basically hit him. Story struck out on a pitch in the other batter's box. Duran wasn't much better. Like, you look at these, you look at the real app or the MLB app or whatever you're watching it on. It's like, this isn't the brand of baseball on this side of the ball. And that's a problem, because even if the rotation fixes itself, if you're going to be the team that plays uninspired, unathletic offense without power, like, the difference in today's game was a 3-run Johnson. You're not going to get a ton of those. You're not going to get, well, you are. And I think we could talk about that in a bit. I think the power will come with this offense. But if you're not going to get those on a, if you don't have 1 through 5 that can do that for you, you got to be able to put the ball in play. And right now, you're not doing it. I think that's, because that was the biggest question coming into the season. That's what Red Sox fans are panicking the most about.
And I think especially from what we saw, like really bite them last year, obviously the 1-run losses and not taking advantage of runners in scoring position. And we, even looking at the Red series, like they've already lost 2 1-run games. You know what I mean? And I feel like, especially kind of like what you mentioned with the offense, yeah, we didn't expect this team to have an insane amount of power, but at the same time, we didn't expect them to have the 4th most strikeouts in the league. And
Yeah.
we did hope that they were going to be able to produce some runs by just putting balls in play, producing good up at bats, getting walks and different stuff like that. But I think especially from just like what we've seen overall, it's just the lack of just like confidence and energy and just what you hope to start a season off with some momentum. And it seems like they're doing the opposite, and kind of like what you alluded to at the beginning of the episode of like, they're just now kind of playing catch up, which just seems like they're doing year in and year out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's a real possibility, and it's a reality that you're coming back home to Fenway, what, 4 games back of your division already? Right. And again, it's April. And the thing that drives me the most nuts is looking at standings in April. Because if you looked at the standings in April, the last year, you're sitting there saying, oh, the Red Sox are out of it. And all of a sudden, they're the 6th best team in the American League by the end of the year. So I do hate doing that. But it gets to a point where you're sitting there and you're saying, can you gain 4 games, by the end of the year on a team like the Blue Jays or the Yankees? Or, last year, the difference between you being at home at Fenway Park for that wild card series and you getting kind of your butt spanked over there in New York were these games in April. were the games in April where you were losing one by one run or, striking out in big situations. And I think it's the frustration that builds and builds and builds.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for people who are listening who are like, wow, they're really like going off to start. I do want to preface like we're gonna do our best to like try and be optimistic. Like we spoke about at the beginning of like we're both pretty positive about this team just overall. We try not to be like the just radio heads who are like always thinking negatively, but at the same time I feel like there's like a difference between being like blindly optimistic and actually like being realistic. And I feel like kind of how we're speaking right now, we're just trying to be realistic, paint the picture of like kind of what a crap start this really has been. But to look at some and try to add some optimism to a few players who have really struggled so far for the Red Sox this year, let's try to predict if it's time to panic or what do you think needs to happen for this player to be able to get to what we expected them to be? Starting off with Trevor Story, has a 138 average, third most strikeouts in the MLB, already has 2 errors, only has had 4 hits over the first 5 games. He does have a home run, but he's been one of the worst hitters, not only in the league, but also on the team.
Yeah. In terms of whether or not to panic, I- um, I don't think it's time to panic about Trevor Story yet. Again, we'll talk about, I'm sure, other players in just a second here, but he's been a veteran guy, right? He's been here, he's done that. And last year he got off to kind of a slow start too. And then, you can't really have it because you don't have Bregman and you really don't have Rafi. But he's been a guy who historically starts a little bit slower. In my opinion, what's going to get him on the right track is just simply having one of those games. We saw it last year, and there's a specific image in my mind of, he was taking the ball the other way a little bit. It was to like right center field where he had 2 doubles in a game, and all of a sudden it was just go time, right? And it's for him, it's about the timing. Like right now, what you're watching with Trevor Story, especially on the high fastballs, and he's always been a bad breaking ball pitcher. He's a little bit under things. He's fouling those pitches off, and then he's sort of getting in his head, and then he's swinging at the sweeper in the other batter's box. And he's going to do that. That's just who Trevor Story is. But once he starts to get that timing down, I think we start to see him turn a corner. I also think confidence too with Story, right? You make the 2 errors right off the bat, and it's like, even like last year he started to fall off offensively at the very end of the season, and it's not a coincidence that's when he started to also have all those errors defensively.
Yeah, I think with Story, I mean, like you mentioned, April he was mediocre. May he was absolutely one of the worst
Terrible.
hitters in the entire league, and I feel like I agree. The confidence aspect for him is going to be huge, but I do think that this is a preview of a maybe lesser version of Trevor Story than we saw last year. This is a thing that I felt like I spoke about on the last episode with Hogdale. A lot of people just like assumed that he was just going to automatically repeat or be better than he was last season. But I feel like just like the assumption, one, that he's going to stay healthy, and two, that he's not only going to like better those stats is just a very high confidence for a guy that we really haven't seen a ton of that lately. And I feel like as well, yes, he could struggle to start the season this year like he did last year, but do we think that he's going to, turn into one of the, top 20 players or top 20 hitters like we saw last season and really be able to turn into 25 homers, 280 average and everything like that? I don't think so. I think he might be a guy who will still be able to, hit 260, 270, but I think those power numbers are going to go down. And I feel like it is a little bit, I don't fully agree with putting your full confidence in a guy like Trevor Story to be able to help carry this offense, especially at his age.
Yeah, I don't totally disagree. I will say I think expecting better from Story is a little bit ridiculous, but seeing him try and get to what he was last year, I don't think's entirely out of the question. Um, if he could do it at how old was he last year? 31, 32. Like he should be able to do it at 33, right? It's not like a difference of 4 years. And this is something he's been doing his entire career, which is just he's gonna strike out and he's gonna hit home runs. Um, yeah, 25 homers. I think you're sitting there saying, I don't know about that, but 20 homers, I think is something he should and will get to if he stays healthy. If that batting average is around 255, 260, it's still going to be a productive year for him. So, yeah, maybe we're not sitting here saying, "Oh, this guy's going to be a top 20 hitter in baseball." I don't know that anyone came into the season thinking Story was going to be a top 20 hitter in baseball like he was for most of the year last year. But just a little bit of that consistency. And again, I think it comes back to timing with him.
And then one of the other guys who kind of became a punching bag throughout this last week, and it didn't really help that like he was semi-marketed as the replacement for Alex Bregman, and Caleb Durbin still hasn't gotten a hit in the first 5 games, struck out 5 times. We were told he's a guy that doesn't strike out. He has great defense, struggled a little bit defensively so far this year. Do you think the expectations were a little bit too high for Caleb Durbin coming into the season?
Um, yes and no. I think the fact that he was the guy that they traded for right after they lost Alex Bregman was always going to put too high of expectations on who this guy was, right? But if you really looked at the statistics and you kind of looked at the projections and you were, understanding who Caleb Durbin was as a player, not so much as the replacement for Bregman, because the Red Sox replacement for Bregman was Ranger Suarez ultimately, right? They went full pitching, and this guy was what probably would have been a smaller trade for a pitcher. Um, like the expectations are that this guy, at least in my mind, is an everyday constant. And I think that, and not so much an everyday constant in terms of this guy's gonna be an all-star and this guy's gonna have 6 WAR by the end of the season, but just sort of a guy who's going to be able to put the ball in play. Again, we go back to the idea of this sort of being that athletic, we're gonna beat you by just sort of beating you down type offense. And to not see that at the gate, yeah, it definitely sucks. I'm not panicking about Durbin. I think, you look at the strikeouts are tough, but I think it's just him in his head, right? And Lou Maloney talked about this on the broadcast today. It's like he's brand new to this team. He was put in as sort of the, hey, this is the guy that's replacing Bregman, at least to the fan base. So he's got that on his head too. And on top of that, it's only his second year in Major League Baseball. Like this guy isn't an experienced veteran player here. He's all of a sudden thrown into the number 5 spot in the lineup. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to bring him down, but once he gets that first hit, I think he'll settle in and maybe not be the superstar Alex Bregman is, but at least be that sort of constant lower in the order type bat for you.
Yeah, I did feel like the criticism was a little bit too harsh for Durbin. Like I feel like they kind of like set him up to fail, putting him in that 5 spot, like you said. The replacement at third base for a guy like Bregman. And he did get rookie of the year votes last year. And I feel like the biggest thing that Breslow was kind of mentioning about Durbin after the trade was that pull air percentage. And that's really going to obviously be able to play once they start playing at Fenway. And I feel like once he's able to build up his confidence, kind of like we said about Story, and he's able to pepper balls off the monster, be able to get doubles, and just be able to like be comfortable, not only in this team, but also in this city, and feel that embrace from the fan base, especially being at home, never really getting to experience the Red Sox fans. I feel like that'll really fire him up and be able to like get him back on track. Now, there was some people at the start of the year of like bold predictions. Caleb Durbin's going to hit 20 home runs. Like he hit 15 last year. He might hit 15
I
again,
don't even think
but
he had 15. I think it was like 11.
yeah, something like that. But at the same time, I think it's one of those things where it's not time to panic. I think for
No,
like
no.
specific players like that are struggling right now, it's just way too early. And once they're able to just like build that confidence, like that's when they're going to hit the ground running. But the biggest part of it now is like you need to hope these guys all get going at the same time. Whereas
Yeah.
right now, none of them are going other than pretty much Will Abreu and Connor Wong in
Yeah.
the offense
Right.
right now.
Yeah, shout out Wong, by the way, dude. Like, if we're gonna talk about anything positive, the start that Connor Wong's gotten off to is maybe the most positive thing. Like imagine if the Red Sox had come back, let's say 2-2, or wait, that'd be 3-3, right? They were dead even, but Connor Wong was mashing. Everyone would be like, "Oh, dude, this team's gonna win 96 games." Like, their backup catcher's starting to hit the ball all of a sudden. Like it feels good to see him sort of get back on track.
Yeah, and he even had like a sub 1 batting average during spring training. So I don't think anybody had confidence in him going into the season. But I want to pose the same question to you about a guy like Roman Anthony of do you think the expectations were too high for him going into this season? Mainly because, especially when the Red Sox did ultimately lack that power to start the year, a lot of people just had in their mind, especially after the WBC, it's like Roman's automatically going to turn into a superstar at 21 years old, second year in the league. He's not going to struggle at all. He's probably going to hit 30 home runs. He's going to get MVP votes. Like, I think he'll probably get MVP votes. I think he's probably going to ultimately be one of the best players in the league down the line. But I was also one of those people that mentioned we will probably see him struggle at some point since he's still such a young player.
Yeah, I said the entire offseason where I think Roman Anthony's going to be a star this year. I don't think that's the question, right? I think by the end of this season, he's still going to be your best player. He's still going to be a guy who, maybe he's not like a top 10 MVP vote getter, but remember Jaren Rand, and probably not to this degree of what Jaren Rand was in 24, but further down the line, 15th, 20th in MVP voting. I still think that's going to happen. Do I think the expectations were too high? Yeah, if gun to my head, yes, right. Of course they're too high. But the problem is that it's not expectations by the fan base out of necessity, right? I think there are some people who are sitting there saying Roman needs to be this guy for the Red Sox to be that great. I never thought that. I just thought that the expectations put on Roman Anthony were just the expectations because of the player that he is. And I don't think anyone was expecting him to, never struggle this season, but I think the highs are definitively going to outweigh this. And I always go back to that Rafael Devers start last year, and I get it. Rafi was a proven player. Rafi was, at that point, one of the better hitters in all of Major League Baseball. But I mean, you look at Roman Anthony's skill set, the home run today, in my opinion, was probably out of such a crappy little series that was, in my opinion, maybe the highest point because you saw him finally adjust because that's what they were beating him with was those sort of backdoor sliders, backdoor cutters because he just wasn't used to seeing those. He took one of those, what was it, almost 400 feet? It was like
Yeah.
110 miles an hour off the bat. Like, okay, you're seeing the adjustments in real time. Like he's gonna hit the ground running at some point. He's just never gonna stop. So expectations should be high on Roman. But yeah, I mean, naturally, I think the expectations were too high, but they kind of always are for guys like that.
I think the biggest thing for him is just being able to adjust to some of those pitches that he isn't used to or he's striking out on. I think he does have the ability to do that, but especially with him having the sixth most strikeouts right now in the league, it is one of those things that isn't really like him. Like we saw last year, he was really good at being able to just command discipline at the plate and being able to just like identify balls and strikes and not swing at balls and just not do what normal rookies usually do. And I feel like most fans just got so used to that. And so especially when we saw in the second game of the series, he struck out four times and three of those times were just on three pitches. It was a little bit of a surprise, especially to myself. But like at the same time, that's just what I feel like you got to expect from a guy who's in his second year. And then once he starts to really get into his own and with all these guys, the biggest thing, just build that confidence at the start of the year,
Yeah.
start to get some momentum. Like obviously with 162, there's going to be the highs and the lows. And hopefully with Roman, there's a lot of highs for an extended period of time.
Yeah. And again, I do think there will be. I think it's just a matter of and you said it best. Like, it's like this team right now, no part of this team is playing with confidence. They're letting the game come to them. There's no one out there outside of Willie Abreu. Willie Abreu is the exception for this. And I think I'm speaking mostly offensively, but even pitching wise too, it's felt like these guys are trying to nibble corners and they're not attacking hitters like the way they should. Um, but it's like I don't know what it was like they that prevented them from coming to the season being like, hey, we're a talented team. Let's just do this damn thing. Instead, it almost feels like, oh man, we really need to win one here. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like they're going into each day like, damn, it's a must-win game. Like
Right.
in every single game, it feels like they're just like trying to come back. Like they're just scratching at the
Yeah.
surface and they're not just like actually in control. Rather they're just like trying to like tread water as best as possible and just like tie the game. Like that's it. And we saw it a little bit in the Red series, but like I hope, especially during this next series, like it's a little bit of a weird take, but it's like I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want the team to be embarrassing in front of Xander. You know what I mean? Like he left the team obviously they've only made the playoffs once since he left for the Padres. And if it's a situation where he's coming back to Fenway for the first time, obviously he's played against the Red Sox since he signed with the Padres 3 or 4 years ago. But at the same time, like if they play and get overmatched like this against the Padres, like and
Yeah.
embarrass themselves against one of their former players, I feel like as a fan, I'm just gonna be embarrassed myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't know that there's anyone, player, fan, manager, front office owner that isn't feeling embarrassed right now. Like, unless you are a fan who's been rooting for them to fail just because you either don't like Craig Breslow or John Henry or whatever, you sitting here with a little bit of egg on your face, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And for like especially like we can talk about like the next series a little bit later too, but I'm curious just from like your mindset. I don't know if you're going to the game at all
Sure
on the
am.
home open. You are? I am too. So I'm curious just kind of like what's your head feeling like going into the game just mainly for that first up a bat of Xander just like mentally of like, damn, like this is gonna be the first time he's back and he's gonna get a standing ovation and like those feelings are gonna kind of come back.
Yeah, dude. Xander was I don't know if you know this. Xander was my favorite player of all time. Like I
Yeah, I
don't
didn't know that.
there is a prime video on my channel. It was the first one that really kind of took off a little bit. It was 4:30 in the morning. I got up to pee and I saw that Xander had left for the Padres because he signed. When did he sign? It was like 2 in the morning or something
Yeah,
ridiculous
I'll
like
never
that.
forget that.
I have a video of me where I'm in tears, dude. Just like I can't believe they actually let him go. And like the offer itself, like there was no doubt in my mind that like the Red Sox shouldn't have matched that. And they ultimately shouldn't have. But like
Right.
yeah, I don't know, man. I'll probably wear my number 2 jersey there. Like yeah, he was for a long time what it meant to be a Red Sox. Red Sox, I can never say that correctly, by the way. Talking about an individual he was what it meant to be a Red Sox player. That's what I always say. Yeah, he was a bona fide leader, and the team won while he was there for a specific reason. I mean, they had talent, but they had him at the helm of this ship. And it's gonna hurt real bad to see him come back and just kind of remember what's gone on since Mookie, since Xander left. It's been, I mean, yeah, coming out for last year too. It sucks so bad that they started this way. Like it
Yeah, I
really,
agree.
like the more I think about it, the more angry I'm getting about it. Where it's like, since when did he leave? 22 going into 23 because they got Massa that
Yep.
off season.
Yep.
Um, 23, 24, miserable. 25, you're like, oh my God, they figured it out. It's time. And now you're a week into 2026, and you're like, oh no, we're covering the same damn baseball team we have for the last 4 years.
The sky is falling. I'm kind of
Yeah.
embarrassed. I'm frustrated. Like I'm excited to go to
I miss
Fenway, but at the same time,
Xander.
like, yeah, exactly. And I kind of feel the same way. Like I'm excited to just be able to like, I guess get semi closure. Like it's very similar to Mookie. It's interesting with both of them going to the West Coast. You had to like wait like what 3 to 5 years to like just
Yeah,
be able to see
Mookie was
them at
recently too.
Fenway. Yeah, and just being able to actually give them the support and just like standing ovation that they deserve. Because especially in terms of Xander, like it always like irked me that like at the end of that season, obviously like they were losing, and so like I remember when he did tip his cap, like it was like a little bit awkward because like the stadium was kind of empty, like nobody knew if he was going to come back or not. He probably knew in his head that he probably wasn't going to come back. But like, I remember when I saw that video, I'm like, this is going to be the last time we're going to see him at Fenway in a Red Sox uniform. And obviously it is. So I feel like everybody is just going to embrace at the home opener of just like, we miss you, Xander. And
I
then
hope
like
so.
move on. And it's like, all right, now we need to dominate the Padres. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I hope so, man. I just like I hope it's not too removed and Red Sox fans aren't too angry with the way things have gone since then and this past week that they just sort of like don't acknowledge Xander. He deserves it.
yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I'm planning on wearing my number 2 jersey as well. But to kind of go back to real quick, just like what we've been talking about over this past week, I think the other part of the frustration of the fan base is especially going into the off season. There's a lot of goals, mainly lofty. looking back at it, that like Breslow kind of put on himself. We're going to get a big bat. We're going to get a new number two starter. Yes, they got Wilson Contreras. They probably got two number two starters, unless you like look at Gray as probably a number three. But at the same time, most fans going into the season weren't super satisfied with the offseason, especially on the offensive side. And now when we're looking at it, Ranger Suarez, Oviedo, Sonny Gray, 12 runs allowed in 12 innings. Wilson Contreras and Caleb Durbin, 3 for 28 or 3 for 38 to start the season.
It was genuinely staggering to me how poorly every single one of Breslow's offseason additions came into the season. I was thinking about it. When was the last time that every single one of an offseason addition doesn't have a good first impression? Like someone said 2015 or 2016 with Pablo, Hanley, and there was someone else. And I was like, yeah, that probably is it. But it's been a while, dude. It's been like at least 10 years since every single one of the Red Sox offseason additions has been, I mean, less than impressive. I will say Wilson Contreras doesn't look terrible.
Yeah, I agree. I think just for a lot of these guys, it's like you just like tried to paint the picture in your head of like maybe it wasn't exactly what we were hoping for on the offense or the offseason additions, but at the same time, like I'm gonna try and just like try and be as optimistic as possible and like hope that everything works out how they built the team. And then obviously record wise, all the stats that we mentioned, but like specifically the guys that they did get, it's like, all right, they're not helping the team win whatsoever. And, I think a lot of these guys like Ranger and Sonny, like they will bounce back. They will help this rotation be really good at the end of the day. Contreras, Durbin as well. Oviedo's a guy where like obviously we heard this past week he's like I don't know what happened with my velocity, it's like way down and I don't know why. It's like are you kidding me?
Yeah, I saw that quote from him and I was like, oh no. It's like, can we just tell me something? You know what I mean? Oh, my mechanics were a little bit off. Oh, I didn't like the mound in Houston. Give me something. Because then it's like, okay, well, how do you go about fixing this, right? You got a guy in Peyton Tolle who had a fantastic spring, a pretty terrible first start, by the way, in Worcester. It was a weird one where he got a ton of swing and miss, but he also gave up a ton of contact. But you're looking at a guy like that, and it's like, okay, out of a bullpen role, Tolley for a couple innings or Oviedo who has no idea why he's not being effective. And it's like, I get it. This was the addition. You traded just Stinson for him. I get it. But like, if you're going to have a guy come out and be like, hey, I'm just throwing slower. What do you want me to do about it? Like you got to be like, guys, there's no other option for you out there. Like, and he's got options. So it's not like you're going to lose him or anything. Just send him down to AAA and let him figure out what's going on if he has no idea. And let's get somebody in the bullpen who's not going to give up. What do you give up? 4 earned runs, like two
I,
two tanks, one to Altuve.
yeah, I think it's going to be a thing where whoever is ready first, Patrick Sandoval, Cutter Crawford, is
Yeah,
automatically going to take his spot. And it's
I
really
agree.
crazy how far he's fallen, where 3 weeks ago, it's like he's a lock for the fifth spot. And then obviously early took that fifth spot. And then now it's like he could probably get sent down before the month even ends.
Yeah, yeah. Well, who'd we see today? Actually, was it Sandoval or Crawford who's starting in Double A on the rehab assignment?
Oh,
I
I
think it
don't
was
100% see.
Sandoval.
Yeah,
I
I
think it
don't
was Sandoval.
100%
Tim
see.
Healy tweeted it out. I think it was Sandoval, but yeah, like if they're like right now they're stretching both those guys out as starters. Once they get into rehab assignments, like you got to sit there and you got to be like, okay, like a rehab assignment for a starters probably what 2 or 3 starts. That's what 15 or 20 days minimum. Why don't you
Yeah.
stretch these guys out in a bullpen role, get them up here in 2 or 3 weeks, and minimize the damage that Johan Oviedo has right now. And I still have faith that he could be a really good pitcher, but like you saw in the last start in spring training, and now it's carried into the season, and you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, if you have no idea what's going on, I mean, hopefully the Red Sox have some idea what's going on, but they haven't communicated that with you. Either that, or you don't want to say what's going on in front of the media. I don't know. Um, you got to find a solution there. You can't have a guy in the bullpen not knowing what's wrong with them.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just send him down to AAA, figure it out, like work on that arsenal, like to maybe even just like not necessarily like phantom IL, but just like give him a break for a sec to just like get his arm back to hopefully where it was last year. And to answer your question, it was Patrick Sandoval will begin a rehab assignment in Double A on Sunday, according to Tim Healy. So I feel like especially with that, it's going to be a great opportunity for Sandoval to show not only the Red Sox that it was a good investment to sign him 2 years ago and hope that he comes back like some sort of what he was with the Angels, but then hopefully it'll be an audition to where you can ultimately offload him for something to a team that needs a rotation guy. And then once Cutter Crawford comes in, it'll just be a seamless transition.
Yeah, I mean that's the hope, right? We'll see what ends up happening. I don't know. With those two guys, it's just such a mystery. Like you sit there and it's you look at their ceilings and it's like, wow, if the Red Sox the rotation doesn't work out, you've got two dudes who are major league starters.
Right.
But you just don't know. They've been like specifically Sandoval's been away from the game for so long. Like you look at what's his name, who pitched the middle game of the series for the Astros, and this one just torched the Red Sox. Lance McCullers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was out of the game for 2 years. Looked terrible when he came back last year, and this year he just looks so electric, right? Like, is there going to be that period with both these guys where it's just sort of figuring themselves out?
Yeah, it's obviously tough to forecast too, since we didn't see either of them in spring training stuff.
Yeah,
But since we mentioned Tim Healy, might as well as mention another report that he spoke about today, which was Tristan Casas had a rehab setback. He ended up straining his left intercostal, which is apparently is a muscle near the oblique and ribs, and he's shut down from hitting until symptoms ultimately like end. And according to Cora, they're going to shut him down for a while. He said that they need to slow him down. And just to put into perspective what Casas has kind of gone through since 2022, he's only played 327 games in the last 5 seasons. Looking back at 2022, had a high ankle sprain, played 103 games. 2023 had some shoulder soreness throughout the season, but ultimately ended up playing 132 games. And then the last 2 years kind of had some freak injuries, rib cartilage tear, only played 30 or 63 games. And then last year, obviously, we saw him trip over first base, had to get severe knee surgery, and that's what he's currently recovering from right now. So curious, like, when do you think we'll see Tristan Casas, and if he's able to at least hopefully build up his stock a little bit this season?
yeah, I genuinely have no idea. The sort of method I've been using on my channel to describe what it's going to be like to get Tristan Casas back is it's essentially a three-step plan because this surgery was so like this is a rare surgery. Like this isn't a baseball injury. You know what I mean? Like this has only happened like a handful of times in recent memory. So it's like a three-step process. You got to get him healthy. You got to get him baseball healthy, and then you got to get him MLB healthy, right? And earlier this week, it was like, okay, you're kind of starting to get towards full baseball healthy. Well, now you took a step back, so now you're still 2 steps away from getting him even remotely close to being a Major League Baseball player again. The answer, like, it felt like June-ish was where he was going to be. Maybe late May was where he was going
Right.
to be before this. Now it sounds like potentially mid-July, August if you're going to get him back at
So
all. And
crazy.
and then by then it's like your team's going to be established. You're like, where do you fit him in? Like early in the season, you could kind of be like, okay, maybe Massa gets off to a good start and you could move him, and maybe Tristan takes over DH, and now you can get yourself a whatever, right? And now you get a little bit of a power bat in the lineup. Later in the season, unless you're going to wait until rosters expand to bring him up, I don't know.
Yeah, part of my laugh, like I'm not like laughing at the overall situation. Like obviously it sucks to see a guy get injured as much as he has, and like it's just more just like the shock. Like I
Yeah.
just like was really hoping that he was going to be able to like revitalize his career, revitalize himself as a baseball player, and like be able to just get back on track to what we were all hoping he was going to be when he first came through the system. And me laughing is just kind of my coping
Yeah.
mechanism
It
of just like
sucks. Yeah,
trying
it
not
sucks.
to like get too upset about it. But especially for him, like even when I had Chris Cotillo on, like at the beginning of March, he was like, I definitely see Casas starting the first month that he's back in baseball shape, which most people before this expected it to be April, that he would spend the whole time with one of the affiliates. And I feel like I agree with your three-step plan of like the biggest thing is when he does come back, even when he is MLB ready, like he needs to like earn a spot on this team. Like he does
Yeah.
not deserve just to like automatically be able to get in. Like he needs to force the pile. He needs to be able to just like show that he is going to be one of the best hitters or just a productive hitter on the major league roster because obviously before the injury last year, he was awful at the plate.
Yeah, I think for Costas' point of view, and he's kind of admitted it too. And I think there's one thing that Costas is gonna do. He's gonna talk. Um, but even he was like, yeah, I they replaced me because I deserved replacing. I wasn't healthy and I wasn't very good, so like I gotta play myself back to it. I think the biggest determining factor as to when when he is MLB ready is what does that power look like? Because again, we go back to, this was supposed to be, and I still think will be a fun athletic team to watch. But if you can get him, if he's in AAA for a month or whatever, and he's hit, 5, 6 home runs, and he's slugging the ball like we saw in 23 and somewhat in 24, although it was to a much lesser extent. Um, if you could see that guy again, that's what earns him a spot on this roster. That's where you start to find room for him is when you say, huh, it's July 31st or whatever at the deadline, and he's hit 6 home runs in AAA through the month of July. Can this be a guy who gives us, 12, 15 in the back half of the season? And if it is, then it's worth the spot. If it's not, I don't know how Costas plays himself back on the roster.
Yeah, I agree. And luckily, Tim Healy did report that it's not the exact same rib injury that he did have back in 2024. But I do think it is something that I think the Red Sox need to look at as why does this keep on happening with his rib? It was kind of similar to what we saw with Rafi, just like the force that he put into his swings, especially with his shoulder, what we saw back in 2021 and we saw kind of linger throughout the past couple years, obviously prior to when he was traded. But I think that is one of those things that the Red Sox need to look at to try and prevent down the line with Costas because he's still a very young player. And this is twice that something like this has happened with his ribs.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I thought I remembered a story when he had first injured it when he was coming back that first time, coming into last year. I thought I remembered a story where he had said like, it happened with my swing. I made adjustments to avoid it. I'm curious if it's just simply one, his body type. Like some people are just more prone to different
Yeah.
injuries than others. But two, I'm wondering if it's just simply how big he is. Right. And I'm wondering if it's just sort of it's tough for a player to fully rework a swing, right? Like you could make adjustments, sure, but to fully rework something that and he's probably, swinging this way since he was what, 12 years old, you know? So maybe it's just him and there's not really much the Red Sox can do about it outside of just pray it doesn't happen again, which it doesn't feel like is going to be something that works.
Man, they really should just trade him for Luis Castillo this tough season. But hindsight is always 2020. But I wanted to kind of wrap up our pre or our review of the first week of the season. One thing I kind of wanted to do on this podcast every week is give shout outs to one player on the Red Sox to give them their flowers. And so curious who's that guy for you?
I mean, it's funny because I'm laughing because before we started recording, we said there were only 3 players. Like, yeah, like it's like, you can't like I was trying this entire time. I knew this question was coming, and I was like, "Is there anybody here?" I will say Whitlock. Even today, I know it was 30 plus pitches, but bearing down and sort of being able to be that stopper that he was last year at the gate, I think that's a pretty positive sign if we're looking for decent things to pay attention to. But it has to be Willie Abreu. It has to be. Right, this guy comes in. He comes off of a WBC where he's a national hero in Venezuela, and you're talking about okay, you want to start him against lefties. You're trying to make this guy an everyday player. We're looking for power in every single person in the organization. I mean, players, managers, front offices, hitting coaches. They were all like, it's going to be Willie Abreu, and everyone's sitting there being like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. What has he got? 4 home runs already? 3 home runs already? Like
Three
like
home
he
runs. Nobody else has more than one.
yeah, he looks totally. I mean, he looks like he's going to live up to expectations right now. And I get it. It's a week, right? But if we're overreacting to the record, we might as well overreact to the player that's doing well. Um, yeah, he looks like he's made every adjustment necessary. The Red Sox have asked of him. He's gotten slimmer. He's gotten, a bit more athletic, which I think is going to help him stay on the field. I everything about what Willie Abreu is doing right now is quite like I said it today. The only thing keeping me going.
He's by far the best player on the Red Sox right now. As you mentioned, has 3 home runs. No other player has more than one. Has 6 RBIs. No other player on the Red Sox has more than two. And he has 10 hits. No other player on the Red Sox has more than five. So he's pretty much doubled, if not tripled, in some of these statistics offensively compared to every other player on the Red Sox offense so far this season. And there's a lot of people on Twitter. I asked the question prior to us recording that agree with you in terms of Wilyer Abreu. One other person said Ryan Watson as well. That was Noah_RS3. For me, like I think it's obvious with Abreu, but I also want to give a shout out to Conley early. We mentioned it earlier in the episode. He was one of the only starters so far in the Red Sox rotation that not only like had length, but also was really effective on the mound, especially for a guy who is still really young in his career. 5 1/3, 5 hits, only allowed 1 earned run, 6 Ks. And I feel like he's a guy who, especially with I feel like there's a tiny bit of a short leash for him on that fifth spot, just with all the different pitching depth that the Red Sox do have. So I'm really happy that he's trying his best to take a full advantage of this opportunity on the Major League roster.
Yeah, great pick. I am curious to see what his second time through the rotation looks like this weekend. I am more curious about Sonny Gray. I do think low key Sonny Gray had a better stat line than he showed. He looked bad to begin with, then he kind of settled in there. So I'm very curious to see what he looks like coming out too. But yeah, Conley's been fantastic. I think I will lose my mind if the Red Sox are like, oh, Patrick Sandoval's ready. Yeah, we're gonna option Conley and we're gonna put Patrick back there just to see what he's got. I'll
He's
lose
just
my
way too
mind.
hot right now. Like, and it's crazy because I don't really think I don't remember a Red Sox pitcher that has dominated this much to start his short career. Like even against the Yankees, yes, he ended up allowing 4 earned runs at the end of the day, but like in a playoff game with the Red Sox season on the line, like he was still dominating to start that game.
Yeah, no, he was good. It was a defense that let him down. Like
Yeah.
he was great, I think, up until like, a couple of bad plays that should have been errors that weren't errors kind of knocked him out of it. Yeah, feels almost like John Lester-ish when he first came up. I'm trying to think of how Buckholz did. I don't think he did very well. But like that's kind of the status that you're putting him in right now.
Yeah, and especially since he's homegrown, that just makes it even better. But you kind
Yeah,
of
oh for
alluded to
sure.
that Padres series. It's going to be Sonny Gray on the mound in the first game, Conley early in the second game, and then Ranger Suarez in the third game. And it's going to be kind of funny to see Suarez go against an old friend in Walker Bueller. But curious
Yeah.
your thoughts. Do you think the Red Sox will lose the first three series of the season?
Dude, I really hope not. Just give me a series win, man. Don't even give me a sweep. Just
Right.
show me life. Let's start with a win and then let's go from there. I don't know if you're talking about struggling offenses. The best one for this pitching staff to go up against would probably be the Padres right now. I mean, I guess there's two ways to look at it, right? Um, Pitching staff for the Padres has been all right. I think coming home to Fenway, this is a real opportunity for guys, especially Wilson Contreras, Caleb Durbin. It feels like both those guys just need a ball off the wall. You know what I mean? Just get it off the monster one time. Be like, oh, that thing's real damn close, and let's have some fun from there. 2 out of 3 would probably be best case scenario. I mean, obviously a sweep would be, but I think realistically 2 out of 3 would be best case scenario.
Yeah, I think they need it. I think they need to actually get some sort of momentum. I feel like they will win the home opener. I feel like being back at home and there might be a little bit of a chip. I wouldn't be surprised if like Cora tries to like put the Xander stuff as a little bit of a chip on the Red Sox shoulder in the first game. Like I hope so. You need something to motivate
Yeah, I don't
these
know how that
guys.
chip can get bigger, but we'll
And
see.
then but then yeah, I think they need to win at least 2 of these games. And then just go from there. Just
Yeah.
get the momentum rolling, and then like hit the ground running. Hopefully, that's all we can
Yeah.
hope for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, there's been the Red Sox have never made the postseason with this record, but there have been a multitude of teams who have made the postseason with this record. It's not over yet.
Yeah, and luckily, at least with them going against the Padres, as we're recording right now, they are beating the Giants 7-1. But if they ultimately do win today, they're going to be 2-4. The Red Sox are 1-5. Luckily, they're not going against a team that's like
White hot.
undefeated or like, you know what I mean, like 5-1. So I feel like they have a pretty good shot. And this is the time where each game is going to be a must win, which is crazy to say this early in the year. But really appreciate you coming on today, Corbin. If anybody wants to check out your great stuff over on YouTube and the podcast that you do, where can they find that stuff?
Red Sea Radio, wherever you want to look. It's the same. It's the same handle everywhere. So, Red Sea Radio. And I appreciate you inviting me on, man. This was a ton of fun.
Absolutely, man. Hope we can do it again soon. And we'll end the episode how we always do, even as tough it is to say right now. Let's go, Sox. Peace.